Welcome to another awesome episode of the Show. We're two geeks who talk about everything. My name is Aaron, and I'm usually joined by my cousin Landon, but unfortunately, Landon is out again this week. So I'm thrilled to welcome another guest co-host. Everyone, please welcome my good friend Brandon.
Hey, buddy, how are you? Pleasure
Doing
to be here and be one of the geeks for this week.
glad to have you here this week, man. So folks at home, I've known Brandon since we were both students at the illustrious Bluefield University. Back then, it was Bluefield College, and that was 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago now.
It's more
Um,
than, yeah.
he's not just a great friend; he's also a husband, a father, and the guy you want to go to if you're looking for a loan. So today we're gonna dive into Brandon's life, his experiences, and get to know more about this guy. So, Brandon, once again, welcome to the Show.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
All right, so we already mentioned a little bit about being a loan officer, so we're going to kick things off talking about the career. You've been in banking for the majority of your adult life. What
Mhm.
inspired you to pursue that career in banking, and what's the most interesting aspect of your job?
It wasn't really being inspired. It was actually, I kind of fell into it. I was working at a place that was US Cellular, and when I'd first gotten out of college, and was working there for maybe about 6 months or so. But we had one of our kiosks in a Kroger store in Roanoke, and they also had actually an in what they called an in-store branch for another bank that was at the time called NBC Bank or National Bank of Commerce. And I would have to go and do public announcements and what they kind of called out time or kind of handing out flyers in addition to selling the phones. And some of the people that worked at the branch there, they said, you might be pretty good at doing this because you might want to try banking because this is a lot of the same things that we do. And so I applied and was fortunate enough to get an interview. And it really, it was one of those things that I had a little bit of a knack for sales, which was part of the gig for the job. And then all the banking stuff, I found out that I was very successful at it, and actually liked it. I liked talking to the people. I liked doing just stuff and learning more about banking. Um, Really, like I said, just kind of fell into it from there, and the rest was kind of history. I mean, we were bought by SunTrust at the time, and just kind of progressed year over year. And I did really enjoy it and enjoyed getting into and managing people, and became a branch manager over time. And then wanted to try the commercial banking side, so I went into what they call the business banking side of SunTrust, and kind of had my own portfolio there. And then my family and I decided to move back to Clifton Forge. And so I decided then that, I was going to, things had changed at SunTrust, and decided that I was just going to make a move. And I went to a local community bank there. And that was when it was really, what I love about that is, we get to really give back to the community. It's not just doing loans for people. These are loans that either help them buy their first business, first house, or their first car, or get a new car, help them consolidate debt to get back on track, or purchase a new business. So it's really, that's the fulfilling part about the job right now, is because our community is so small, and really depends on things like that. And just to be able to kind of put my thumbprint on that is just to as a form of giving back is really fulfilling.
I imagine so. I think about how much of a difference there must be between working where you're at now with a smaller bank as opposed to a national bank like SunTrust was. Because I spent time with SunTrust myself, and of course it was a very different experience for me. But I imagine the corporate side of things has got to be very different when you are Um, I don't know, like you said, you feel like you're actually helping people and connecting with people on a more personal level when it's a smaller location like that. Is that basically what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I mean, there's some positives to corporations. I mean, because they've got that structure, which
Sure.
kind of keeps things neat and orderly, and kind of goes through the chain of proper chain of commands, if you will. But what I find about community banking is it really is a form of almost lifeblood to areas such as ours. And I think those community banks they translate over to larger cities like Roanoke or Richmond and beyond. There's always going to be a need for those, but they what you will always hear and what I think is really I actually believe is that they are almost a lifeblood and sometimes a backbone of what really small business is. And I think small business is obviously
Mm,
a lifeblood and a backbone of really this country.
yeah. So a lot of experience in the banking industry, and obviously you've witnessed a lot of ups and downs in our economy.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on whether things have improved or gotten worse over the years, and what do you see for like our economic future? Not to get too
Yeah,
heavy.
no, it's that's no, it's so I mentioned just kind of community banks being there and on also banks in general. A few years ago we had the pandemic that we went through, and they had what they call the paycheck protection loans, and
Hmm.
our institution was very um, uh, very I guess instrumental in being able to get some of those funds out to those community or so some of those small businesses to keep those doors open. Um, but what they didn't, and this is again just strictly opinion. I'll just say that this is not any type of professional, advice or any type of professional opinion or anything. This is just strictly, my what I've known and seen through the industry over the years. But we had a long time where we had low interest rates and we had low inflation that we had for so long. But what I felt when the government stepped in and they put so much money into the economy at the time where they felt like that we needed it, and rightfully so to an extent. Um, that there wasn't really um, there wasn't really any type of plan or real mechanism that they said at the time to pay for it. And so when after things subsided and we saw supply chain issues and we saw all those snags and everything, and we saw still shutdowns coming. Some people going back to work much slower than what others did. That obviously created such a rise in inflation, and so the Feds kind of decided that they were going to step in and say, well, in order to get this under control, we're going to have to raise interest rates um, back from historical levels that we haven't seen with the low interest rates for so long to some of the higher interest rates that we hadn't seen since probably 2007, 2006, 2007. But what higher interest rates are fine, provided that they because they work well on the deposit side, not so much maybe on the loan side or those who are trying to get the loans. But what we had in conjunction with that is that we had high inflation as well. So it wasn't really we haven't seen that since probably the 80s. I think that we had both a high interest rate environment and a high inflation environment. And that has really, I've seen where that has put a strain um, on middle class, lower class, obviously also. Um, and I think as far as it's really interesting to see that the economy still seems to move. Um, and it's almost as though I feel as though I'm holding my breath. I think that I've always been under the impression that if we have two consecutive quarters in a row where we have negative growth in the GDP with gross domestic product, when we have two consecutive quarters where the economy essentially retracts, then you're in what's considered as a recession. Well, there's a lot of people that at the time, which was probably about a year or so ago, that I was thinking, well, I feel like this is very, you know, very much a time that we feel like that we're in a recession. Others would say, no, 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 you've got to really drill down a little bit farther in the numbers. You've got to look at a couple of these other indicators instead of just what you kind of generally know of the retraction of the GDP. Um, it, it's it still seems as though that I feel like that it's fragile.
Hmm.
What we are seeing now is uh, we are seeing that they are kind of, yes, inflation is doing what it's supposed to do, and uh, Jerome Powell and the rest of the Feds are drawing that hard line where they're still saying we are going to continue to raise interest rates until we get inflation back down to that 2.5, 3% uh, window. I think that's going to take longer than what maybe they want to say or what maybe they want to anticipate. So I think that we're going to be in this higher interest rate environment for a little bit longer period of time. At least, but at least we're seeing to where they are slowing down the increase in the interest rates. That has slowed down over the last, let's say, 4 months or so. Um, Obviously everybody wants to say, you hear it all the time, is like, well, nothing's going to happen next year because it's an election year, and that may actually be kind of true, is that we may not see a lot of activity for the next at least 12 months until we get through to see what if there's going to be any type of transition in either of the in any of Congress or the White House. So I
Right.
think we're probably going to be kind of, I don't want to say stale, but just maybe just kind of steady for the next 12 months or so.
Gotcha. All right. Well, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about your academic journey. So you started out at Dabney Lancaster Community College, but that's changed, right? That's not called Dabney anymore.
It's one of the hardest things it's about as hard as for me to say Bluefield University as it was
All right.
Bluefield College. It is, and even still to the local community here, it's still Dabney Lancaster, but it is Mountain Gateway Community College. Yeah.
Gotcha.
I got my associates there. I took 2 years there at uh, Mountain Gateway, and then transferred to Bluefield University. Um, and I only was very fortunate to get my degree in another 2 years.
Yeah. Uh,
Um,
yeah. So you came into Bluefield. I was already a student there. I was a
mhm.
I guess your it was both of our junior year when you started and transferred in. So thinking about both of those experiences with Dabney and with Bluefield, how did those experiences shape you, and what are some of the most memorable moments you can think of from your time as a student, if you can narrow it down?
Yeah, I mean, I would probably keep the answer broad because now you're talking 20 years that we've been removed. As far as, there are some specific things that we all get together and we talk about, which are just some of the funny stories and things that we all remember, and we're always
Sure.
going to pull those, and um, it's always going to be kind of the same general story. But man, I really Dabney was good for, well, Mountain Gateway was good for me because yeah, I wasn't ready to leave. And I was relatively sheltered, I think. Really just kind of stuck I didn't do a ton of extracurricular sports or activities or anything while I was growing up. Some of the little league and I played golf on the high school team for a couple of years, but it wasn't like I was into every single thing or going to every single event or anything like that. When I got to Mountain Gateway, I had actually moved from my parents' house to my grandparents. And I feel like that really gave me a chance to just kind of open up. It gave me a chance. I was starting to work. I was starting to meet people that weren't just from Allegheny High School. They were from Covington. They were from Bath County. They were from Rockbridge. And so you're really getting a chance to meet a lot of different new people. Um, and then, I had actually met who we both are very close to, is Mark Hypes. And, he was from Botetourt and going to the college as well. And he was like, well, I'm going to Bluefield. And, when when I was coming to the point to where, you know, you when you're in high school, you always have to get your applications into where you're going to go to college, and a lot of times they want you to do that. You kind of have maybe an idea, at least maybe by the end of your junior year, into your first part of your senior year. I had no clue, no idea. And the same still applied because my time was then ending at the college, at the community college. And I was sitting there and I was like, well, there was Barham, there was Radford, but that was about it. And I was a lot of it, I didn't really have the confidence to say that I would be able to go to one of these other schools and actually be successful. Wouldn't have known anybody, was, still kind of reserved, even though I'd kind of come out on a shell a little bit. But so I just decided, if he's going to go, I know this person. Let me tour it. Let me take a look. And it was obviously, and the other thing was that when I applied, they immediately accepted me, which I think they accept probably pretty much anybody that had applied at the time. So that was kind of how I had ended up at Bluefield, and that was the thing that just stands out to me the most was just the intimacy of the campus and the size of the school, and just getting to know, even though it was small, you were still away at college. You're still 2 hours away from where you grew up and what you call home. And you know, I was able to meet great people like you and Mark and Andy and so many others that were there. And it was really, that was what stands out to me the most. I was very fortunate to have some good instructors. D. Shoemaker was great. Dr. Anderson was great because my degree was what kind of like it was a business administration, but I had a concentration in information technologies. So I was able to kind of really, and that was IT then, was what I almost feel like was still really kind of unfolding, and it was still almost DOS based to what you can see it today, right? This is that basically all of it feels like that it does it for yourself now, but then you're still kind of coding, you're still very hands on with stuff. But I had some great instructors that I had there, and uh, really learning to kind of stand on my own uh, when I had gotten there, especially by the time that I had finished.
So want to bring up the fact that you have been known to run in a number of races over the years.
Mhm.
You've done 5Ks, you've done 10Ks, half marathons. Did you ever do a full marathon?
No, no, I don't know that my body would have allowed it.
I like one person I've met who she was running a half marathon. She said, "Yeah, I'm only half crazy."
Yeah.
Uh, but looking back, what would you say was your most memorable or maybe most challenging race that you participated in?
Mm. I've done 9 halves, and uh, several 10Ks. And I think so. I'll give you two examples. One of them was the most challenging, and I think that one was probably the trail half that I did in the Pocahontas. Um, I guess it's a national park, and or I think it's Pocahontas also. And it's out there in kind of outside of Richmond.
Okay.
I, halves already are supposed to be, most of the time you think, well, if I'm running a half, I'm going to be running on asphalt or cement, concrete, whatever. That one is all trail, so it's a lot of wooded areas, it's a lot of gravel that you're on, a lot of roots, a lot of trees that are kind of there,
Huh.
more kind of hilly territory. So you have to
Gotcha.
go in, yeah, you have to go in expecting that your times are going to be a little bit slower.
Mhm.
Um, and so it was a hard kind of I'd say a hard race. It was a fun one though. But the one that really stands out the most to me as far as would be the Gettysburg half that I ran in Gettysburg, and I ran with Kara's brother and her other cousin, so with Keenan and Joe. Um, And so my brother-in-law, who is Keenan, he is a history teacher. And he is incredibly smart, and he can tell a story very well. And so we had, I'd say, at least half to two-thirds of that race was him just talking about stories about things that happened in the Civil War and at Gettysburg. And one of the things that will always stand out in my mind was when we came around the turn to where it just opens up to where it's the field where one of those battles took place on one of the battlegrounds, and it was kind of a rainy day,
Mhm.
or it kind of subsided, so there was still an overcast and it was kind of some fog that was out there. But when you just come out and you see that kind of that little bit of fog that's kind of sitting out there and on that hallowed ground, and you just know what happened a couple of hundred years before. We were just running through there, and that was pretty powerful, I think, to experience.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. And for your fans that you have out there, your few that you have that you say that you have, um, you and I ran in my first 10K, which was the Monument Avenue 10K.
Hmm.
And that was when I got finished with that race, that was when I told myself I was going to run a half, because I came out and I was on such a high after that. And that's a really fun one to run because
Yeah,
it's flat. There's a ton of people there, so there's people cheering you on right in the middle of Monument Avenue. You're already kind of going slower because you're just kind of wall to wall, so there's no expectations there. And so I got through it, and I just felt as good as I did, and I was like, I'm going to do a half.
that's awesome. All right, so going down the memory lane a little bit more. You mentioned that you had moved back to Clifton Forge several years ago. You also grew up there, right?
I did, yeah.
So, how would you say that the community has evolved over the years?
So when it's a great question because uh, Kara always, aside from maybe a couple of years, Kara always they had a shop that they had in Clifton Forge, Club Car Shop and Deli, and she operated it and ran it for a good while and a long time. And she was actually going back and forth, probably much longer than when I left Clifton Forge. I thought I was leaving. I left in 2000, and aside from going back a couple of times here and there, I really kind of left it behind. But she always went back and forth, and she kept telling me, she said, you know, you've got to go back. You just got to go. It's there. It's different. It's different. And I didn't believe it whatsoever. I was like, you can't tell me, because when I grew up, it was a lot of those businesses were folding up, and there wasn't, you could roll a bowling ball down in the middle straight through Ridgeway, which was the main drag in downtown Clifton Forge. I was like, there's no way that you can tell me that things are different. But it felt like that there wasn't a lot of job opportunities. It wasn't a lot of retail. It wasn't much that you could really write home about. But about in 2009, there was a group, this group of really core volunteers that got moved really from out of town, and they brought some of the people that were local and really got them involved. And you really started to see that needle kind of move a little bit. There was a huge venture and a huge undertaking that group of volunteers went through, and I actually became a part of when they renovated the historic Masonic Theater. It was just under a $7 million renovation that they went through, and they utilized historic tax credits and federal and Newmarket and all whatever tax credit you could think of. They used it to renovate this theater, and that was almost like a switch that really turned the tide on the town. I feel like, and so there's still it's clean. I mean it does it have a lot of big industries? No, it doesn't. But I think a lot of those things seem like that they are kind of coming in a little bit, both in Covington and in Lowmore. And Clifton Forge has really latched onto this kind of arts community type thing. They've got the arts School of the Arts. They've got the Arts and Crafts Center, as well as the theater. So seeing that it is trying to find this identity of being this arts community versus, you know, uh, just lucky to get by, uh, you know, 20, 15, 20 years earlier. It's really been an interesting evolution to watch.
All right, so moving to some other kind of I don't know, kind of switching gears again. Do you have any recommendations? Like I'm always looking for new things to watch or new things to read or whatever. Do you have any movies or TV series or book recommendations you'd like to share with our audience?
This is gonna I'm not the biggest reader in the world, although I have started reading more books that have been kind of helpful to me, evolve me as a person. And TV shows, I feel like that I reached the end of Netflix about 5 years ago. I've got as many streaming services as you can think of, and I hardly ever watch those things. I'll maybe you know watch hot ones on YouTube. I love hot ones, so that's always a go-to. But I've been more of a music person more than anything else, and because music I think generally resonates with me more than any television show or book or anything. I think it just figures out what my mood is and just nails it every single time. And um, so this is really totally random, and probably people would laugh at me for thinking this, but John Mayer actually has a new channel on Sirius, and it's just called Life with John Mayer. And my wife Karen and I have always been big John Mayer fans. She's probably a bigger fan than I am, but we've gone to plenty of his shows, and but he's got this new station that he's got on there, and I mean his taste in music and just knowing all of what he does in the industry, and like that really is what I am big time into right now. So if you have Sirius, it's on channel 14, so check it out.
So it's not just his music. He kind of curates a playlist.
Yeah, I mean it's like his station. So he's on there, he DJs every now and again, and he just throws whatever, music that he's got. So you hear Ed Sheeran, you hear Coldplay, you hear, anything from uh, indie to pop to rock, anything like that he's got. And those are all the things that I'm really for some reason, I've really gotten into bluegrass since the pandemic. And so between his station and listen to some of those bluegrass things, but yeah, whatever that he has kind of on his mind, that's what you'll hear.
Hmm, that's awesome. All right, so I'm gonna do some rapid fire questions if you're up for it.
Okay.
All right. Favorite childhood TV show?
Transformers.
All right. If you could have dinner with any historical figure, who would it be?
Oh boy, I don't know. Pass.
Okay. Beach or mountain vacation?
Mountain. And I'll just say, I know it's rapid fire. My wife and I talk about this. Kara loves the beach. I'm just okay with the beach. Put me in the mountains and let me camp.
Nice.
Cabin,
Morning.
cabin, not tent.
Right. Morning person or night owl?
Night owl.
If you could time travel, would you go to the past or the future?
The hmm, past, the past.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
If you had a superpower for a day, what would it be?
There's so many.
Uh,
There's so many good superpowers that are out there.
this is very
Uh,
psychologically telling.
I think kind of what Spider-Man does, and just with his webs and his spidey sense, and
Okay.
you know whooping around New York all the time with his webs.
That would be fun. I love playing the video game. I'll just start swinging through the city. Like I don't even
Dude,
play any side missions.
I've heard about this, and it's only on PlayStation, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Ah, see, and I got an Xbox a few years ago, and I have heard so much about this game, and I've heard it's just unbelievable.
It's fantastic.
I
Uh,
mean,
I wish, I haven't gotten into virtual reality or anything yet. I've tried it a couple of times, but that's one I kind of wish that they would come out with a virtual reality version of,
yeah,
so you could be
yeah,
like in Spider-Man's like frame of mind and like
yeah. Just
be awesome.
going through the buildings, through the skyscrapers and everything else. Ah,
Yeah.
that's the dream.
All right. Favorite pizza topping.
Ham and mushroom.
Okay. What's the last song you listened to on repeat?
Well, so my daughter, I take her to school. I take Amelia to school every morning. And so they go to, well, and I'll tell you, it's from the Broadway musical Six, and she just listens to like the same three songs, but maybe even before that, it was Olivia Rodrigo.
Gotcha. Okay. Um, if your life had a movie title, what would it be?
How did I get here?
What's something you've always wanted to learn but haven't had a chance to do yet?
Oh man, uh, I've always picked up the guitar a little bit, but I want to learn more about it. That has always been fascinating to me. My dad was so good at it, and my daughter picks it up and plucks around on it. And I tell myself I'm going to do it one day and just teach myself on YouTube.
You basically just need to know three chords, man. You got most of the
I
songs out
know
there.
it's what made Nirvana successful.
That's right. Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
If you could visit any place in the world right now, where would it be?
Uh, Modern day or past day?
Right now, today.
Right now, no. I'd go. I think I'd go back to New York.
Okay.
We went there earlier this year. Well, if you really wanted me to dig into it, I would say I would go into New York in the 30s or 40s, like after the Depression. Like
Okay.
when, like that's I think like architecture fascinates me,
Yeah.
right? Like old buildings, and I think you know this about me. Old buildings fascinate me, and to see those skyscrapers starting to go up like that in that time in New York, it would be fascinating.
You got all that Art Deco
Yeah,
style.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite app on your phone?
Uh, I get on Twitter a lot.
Okay. You mean X?
Yeah, Twitter.
It's always Twitter.
It's
Um,
always, it's always.
if you could have a conversation with any living person, who would it be?
Hmm. Famous, doesn't matter. Not famous person.
Anybody?
Ah, gosh, I have no idea. I have no idea. Pass.
You can pass that one too.
Yeah,
Um, what's the most adventurous thing you've ever done?
roller coasters are about it.
Okay,
Like that's the most adventurous I think, as far as like extreme type something. I feel like
sure.
roller coasters is about it.
I'm with you. Do you have a go-to karaoke song?
I think "Don't Stop Believing" always would be either that or New York, New York" by Frank Sinatra.
Nice. If you could have any job for a day, what would it be?
Hmm. I would be a podcaster.
What's a skill you wish you had mastered by now? This is a lot like the guitar question, but if there's
Handiwork
anything
around
else.
the house. Yeah, handiwork around the house. Full on. Kara is so much better than that than I am. It's
Yeah,
sad. Yeah, I'm so I get so ahead of myself on it, or I'll get into a project and then just stop because it's not looking or it's not going the way that I think that it should, and I just that so I the handiwork for sure.
gotcha. One more. What's the weirdest talent you have?
I write pretty good with both hands. I don't know if that's weird.
It's not normal. You don't. Well, I mean, I don't mean that like it's the strangest thing in the world. Just, but to be ambidextrous, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I already am with for the most part. But I write left-handed. That's I'm dominantly left-handed. But when it comes to sports, golf, hockey, baseball, whatever, throwing, it's my right hand. So,
Huh. All right. Before we wrap up, do you have any exciting plans or projects on the horizon coming up?
uh, Christmas is coming, man.
It is.
Christmas is coming, and we've actually done two trips this year. We went to New York this year in January. We went to Colorado to Red Rocks, and both of those were fun. They were a blast. And I think the only other thing on the horizon, and I don't know if it'll be this year or next, is uh, Bill wants to go to Universal and Disney again. So we'll probably do that.
Awesome. That sounds like a lot of fun. All right. So are you on social media? You said you get on Twitter a lot. Are you still like active on Twitter? Would you want to be found by any of our folks?
I mean, anybody can at me if they want to, but I don't. I'm not on Facebook, and I don't do anything on Instagram. Just it's I'll just go on and just kind of scroll through Twitter. But if
Okay.
anybody wants to at me, they can.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have for what we got going on today. Thank you once again, Brandon, for being an awesome guest co-host. Of course, you will be back for our next episode, and we are going to be discussing one of the greatest Christmas movies of all time, A Christmas Story. So until then, listeners, viewers on YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe, and smash that bell icon, like all the kids say to do, so you'll be notified whenever we post something new on here. Uh, Again, Brandon, thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.
This has been a ton of fun, man. It's always good to talk about myself every now and again. Great questions. Great. Felt like that 30 minutes just flew right on by. So I appreciate it, buddy.
Dude, you're an expert on yourself, so I mean, you might as well talk about it, right?
That's it.
All right, guys. Until next time, have a great whatever it is wherever you are.